Welcome to Keeping Up at the Capitol with Senator Tom Casperson. This program comes to you from Lansing each month to keep you informed on issues and events important to the Upper Peninsula. This month, Senator Casperson discusses the resource management and economic impact of northern Michigan's timber industry with the Louisiana-Pacific's John Lamy and Plum Creek Timber's Charlie Becker. And now, let's join Senator Casperson and his guests.
I want to welcome our viewers to Keeping Up at the Capitol. And if we could get started, I'd like to introduce my guests, Charlie Becker, John Lamy. Maybe we could start. John, you could give us a little background of what you do.
Sure. Well, my name is John Lamy. I'm a resource manager with Louisiana-Pacific in Sagola, Michigan. I have responsibilities for the Lake States, our mills in the Lake States. Have a forestry degree from Michigan Tech up in Houghton, Michigan, and have worked in the industry ever since, starting in Champion, Michigan, and worked in northern and lower Michigan for a few years, and back to the UP in about 1990, and been with Louisiana-Pacific ever since.
Charlie?
Yeah, I'm the resource supervisor for Plum Creek out of Escanaba, Michigan. I started my career, actually went to Michigan Tech and received a bachelor's and master's degree. Finished there in 1986 and started at that time working for Mead Corporation in Escanaba, working in the planting operations and research arena. And then several years later moved into the operations and timber harvesting type area, and now work for Plum Creek, and I had the advantage of working on the same land base for 25 years.
Well, if through your introductions our viewers haven't figured out what the topic is today, the topic is going to be our forest and the relative relationship it has to our industries that are up in the Upper Peninsula and the entire state. So maybe we can start with the magnitude of the forest and how that relates to what both of you were involved in.
Sure. Well, to start off, our company has mills in this state and the Lake States for that matter because of the resource, our renewable forestry resource. Michigan currently has about 18 million acres of forest land. The interesting part of that is it's been growing more and more acres ever since inventory has been taking place starting back in the 30s. And so it's a good picture. We've got a lot of business created through our forests. It's about a 50,000 job industry annually, and adds about 12 billion to the economy. We're a small part of it, our corporation, but it's huge across the state. Very important to many areas of the state. And one of the more interesting things is up in our neck of the woods, the UP is 87% forested, but only 24% of the forestry firms are there. You go to southern lower Michigan and the numbers change. It's 23% forested, but 52% of the forest firms are there. So it impacts the whole state everywhere.
Charlie, any thoughts on the impact of the industry?
Yeah, the economy, it's very significant, especially on the forest product side in northern Michigan, but also in southern Michigan as well. We are a large landowner. We own about 580,000 acres in the Upper Peninsula. I like to say we own about 6% of the Upper Peninsula, and one of the largest timber producers. The people that harvest our timber are not employees of Plum Creek, but they are contractors. So we contract with probably 50 different businesses or more producing timber that gets shipped all over the state and the Lake States, and we even export a little bit. But most of it stays right within the Upper Peninsula and helps to provide wood and timber to the mills that are there. So there's lots of spin-off jobs that go with that, but very significant contribution to the economy across the state.
Just staying on this for a minute, just a thought that I had. Another thing that happens with this industry that maybe people don't realize is we're very connected to other states, like Wisconsin, for example, where our products go back and forth. Would that be a fair statement? How we're interconnected with states, probably even Minnesota if you get to the west end. Even the Canadians have kind of an exchange with our industry.
Most definitely. We at our Sagola mill buy wood out of Wisconsin. Our Minnesota mill and our western Wisconsin mill pull wood back and forth across those borders. Over in Newberry, we have a fair amount of our wood coming in from Canada, and they import wood out of the Upper Peninsula too. So it's a lot of commerce going on between all three states and into Canada as well.
For us, we have land also in Wisconsin as well as numerous other states. And so there's a lot of wood from Michigan that goes down to Wisconsin, a lot of wood from Wisconsin that comes up to Michigan, depending on the species and the product. And we also ship quite a bit of wood to southern Michigan. We've got markets as far south as Clare and below there.
Go ahead, John.
One thing I might add that Charlie made an excellent point is that this all starts with the resource, of course, the renewable resource that we're blessed with in the Upper Peninsula, but also the small family businesses that produce the wood to us. Charlie's business, he contracts with the small family businesses anywhere from 1 to 2 employees to up to 50 employees, and they rely on them to get their forest management done. We rely on those same businesses to actually produce this wood from the woods, bring it into our mill. We have almost 300 employees between our 2 mills in Michigan, but there's a far cry more out in the forest, actually implementing forest management plans and supplying us with wood so we can keep our employees going as well. So.
Probably full disclosure for our viewers. I need to have full disclosure here. I relate to what you just said because I was in the log hauling business and I was a 3rd generation at it, and also. I still have family involved in it, and Charlie, you've been very gracious and helped my family out with Plum Creek, and so there is a connection. I certainly understand where you're coming from, and you're right about the impact that it has on the small business, which we were, and it does have an impact on our families and the economy up in the Upper Peninsula. But now that being said, and we're talking about the industry, let's talk a little bit about the sustainability. That's one of the questions that I always get when we talk about the timber industry, and people see those trucks going up and down the road and they see the volume and they're thinking, how could we ever sustain that? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and share with people that cycle.
Sure. It's obviously very important. So the sustainability is you know, the amount of wood is part of the sustainability, the wildlife, recreation, all the benefits that we enjoy off the forest are all part of sustainability, and it's important to all of us, our local communities, our people from lower Michigan that recreate in the Upper Peninsula as well. So it's on the forefront of our minds. We'd like to stay in business for a long time and continue to stay in the Upper Peninsula, and the numbers indicate that we're in good shape there. Right, currently the new forest inventory and analysis numbers that the Forest Service does on all lands indicates that we're growing 2 times what we harvest annually. And that's just a great story. We've got lots of recreation opportunities because of it on lands like Charlie owns, Plum Creek, on public lands, whether it's state and federal lands, and on obviously private individual lands as well. It's just a great story, and a good analogy I would give is a good friend of mine that looked at the data not too long ago over a 30-year period measuring these FIA plots. He looked at the numbers, and he calls it the bank account. And you know, everybody's got a bank account, everyone has a 401k and is concerned about it these days, but you know, he goes back to this 30-year period. In the beginning, that inventory said we had 450 million cords standing at that time on the stump in the woods in Michigan. And he relates that the growth of that forest is the interest that you get on your bank account. And of course the withdrawals are when you buy tuition for your child or a new refrigerator or whatever, and that's the removals or the withdrawals, the harvest, and then of course what do you end up with in the end. And during that 30-year period, we started with 450 million cords. We grew 520 million cords. We withdrew or harvested 270 million cords that employs all those people we just talked about earlier. And currently we have 700 million cords. So we gained 250 million cords over that period while providing all that economic activity and the sustainable forest that we enjoy today. So it's just a great story, and one where we don't have to worry about going to foreign countries to get and worrying about not replacing it. So,
Charlie?
Yeah, just maybe a few generalities along that whole line of sustainability. Again, as John mentioned, it's a very positive story out there. And the story has little nuances depending on who you're talking about. If you're talking about forest industry or the large industrial landowners, pretty much the harvest levels are very similar to what is being grown. So you're harvesting about what you're growing or thereabouts. On a state, we're probably fairly similar to that, maybe harvesting a little under what growth is. Not exactly sure where that is, but a little under. Where the real opportunity really stands is on small private individuals as well as the Forest Service. There's a tremendous amount of wood growing on those that is not being utilized, and that's where that extra growth is coming from. So there's opportunities to really expand upon a lot of different areas, but it's a great story.
Well, kind of leading into what you just said, one of the issues, not just sustainability, but the forest health itself. And maybe we could talk a little bit about how managing our forest wisely relates to that. And I believe there is a connection to a healthy forest that way. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that, which is kind of what you're driving at.
Exactly. And forest health issues, there's always been issues related to disease and insect in the forest everywhere. That's nothing new to the state of Michigan. Right now we're dealing with a few insect problems, such as people hear about the emerald ash borer or the beech bark disease. And those are issues that have cropped up in the last 10 years or so. But the fact is, no matter what the disease or insect problem you have, the way to keep forests healthy is to keep them growing vigorously and to keep actively managing them. Because the more vigorous the trees are growing, the better that they can fend off disease and insect problems. So that's nothing new that's happening here, and that's the best story. The key for us is we want to keep actively growing and managing our forests. In fact, I tell people when asked the question, what's the greatest threat to forest health in the forest in Michigan? I say the greatest threat would be if there was a loss of the forest products industry. If the industry goes away, which is similar to what's happened out west in this country, then we'd start to have disease and insect problems that would be much more severe than they are today.
Having no market for the wood and then just allowing nature to take its course.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
People like to think that trees last forever, and trees are like people. Eventually they get old and they die.
Right. And
so if you don't use them, they're eventually going to, there's going to be mortality.
Yeah. John, anything you want to add to that?
Charlie makes a good point. Right now, if you look at the numbers again, we have almost as much volume dying each year in Michigan as we harvest each year. Now, obviously, we would never capture all that mortality. There's submersible trees that are dying. There's fires, lightning strikes, those types of things. All kinds of things enter into mortality. But the bottom line is there's an awful lot of opportunity to capture some of that material and put it to work both in our economy and for the forest, replenishing it and keeping it healthy.
Well, that gets to, when you talk about fires, and that gets to access and those type of things, maybe we could talk a little bit about the roads, the water quality, and kind of the issue between the two. And I know that this industry deals with that probably on a daily basis, so maybe we could talk a little bit about that and share with the viewers maybe some of the problems we're faced with.
Water quality is one of those issues that's important and should be important to every citizen of the state of Michigan. Because we use it for our drinking water, we use it for our fish habitat, and we're surrounded by the beautiful Great Lakes. So it's really important. But roads are also important. Obviously for timber harvest, we need roads to access the timber. But it's not just for that. Many of the roads that are built today are actually used to provide folks, the general public, the opportunity to go out and recreate in those areas. So it's important access issues, not just for timber, but also for recreation. The good thing is the science basically supports across the country that in general, the interactions between roads and the stream crossings and water quality issues on forest lands is a pretty positive situation. And that's because as the forest industry, we adhere to what they call BMPs, best management practices, which calls us to voluntarily agree to certain things. In some cases, there's actually laws that you need to follow to make sure that you're not putting dirt in a stream, you're not disturbing areas like that, and helps to keep the water clean. So it's really a pretty positive story.
Mm-hmm. John?
Yeah, I'd echo what Charlie said. And most of us that live and work in the UP also recreate in the UP. So I use a lot of the same logging roads that have been used to deliver wood to our facilities for recreation, to access hunting lands, to drive around. A lot of people bird watch on using the same roads. Rabbit hunting, all kinds of opportunities are there because of that road system that allows you to get out and about and enjoy it. And Charlie makes a good point. The Sustainable Forestry Initiative, we do monitor audit jobs to make sure that the operations are adhering to BMPs. And we just recently sponsored a group that went together and third-party audited a bunch of sites where water quality was involved in harvest sites, and the results came back very positively. They're in the making now, but it's well over 90% compliance with those BMPs relative to water quality. So it's a great story, and it's something we ought to really be proud of.
Well, that leads into something I'd like to talk a little bit with you, Charlie, about, and it kind of relates to some of the experiences I've had in the Upper Peninsula with meetings that I've held concerning the recreational side of it. And John, you mentioned the access and the different things that come from the industry and the access it creates by building the roads we build. Been working a lot with ORV people, people that recreate out on the property, hunting, fishing, doing those type of things, because a lot of your property, if not all of it, is put in the Commercial Forest Act, which allows access to that land. And I have to tell you that whatever you're doing, Charlie, what we're hearing up in the UP, you're doing it well, because usually folks in your business, usually people call, they're upset, they didn't get what they wanted out of an experience, they were out there and they were blocked off or something. But we're not hearing that from Plum Creek. In fact, I'm hearing just the opposite. Plum Creek and yourself have really been lifted up pretty high amongst that community in your interaction with them. Could you share with us a little bit maybe how that program works, and what's the magic here? What are you doing that's really working? Because we got to emulate that across the state with the interaction with the sportsmen. Well,
first I want to thank the Senator for the kind words. We take a lot of pride in what we do on our land that's in the Commercial Forest Act. That program, that Commercial Forest Act, has been around for in excess of 70 years or more. And the whole intention of it was to incent landowners to keep land in producing fiber for forestry and producing timber. And the way it works is that we as a large landowner receive a tax break for that, but in response we need to allow the public access for hunting and fishing on our property. And so there's about over 2 million acres across the state of Michigan that is under that Commercial Forest Act program. Now, there's a lot of things that commercial forest landowners do that is not required by law. For instance, we allow snowmobilers we have access agreements for the snowmobile clubs to go and run the trails through our property. And we do that because we think it's important that we're getting a benefit from the state, the tax break. It's important for us to show the public that we're thankful for that and we appreciate it. Because that act is so important to us that if it wasn't there, it would be hard to do business in forestry in this state.
Well, it's working, and I'm just asking that you keep it up, because it appears to me what's happened is you folks have applied a little common sense to this thing. You're not rigid with it. You understand the need, that the public has, or the want to be out there, and you're certainly making it work. So, great job.
Thank you.
If we could, let's talk a little bit about the non-industrial private landowner, and so the viewers understand what I'm talking about. You are a company that owns a bunch of land, and you would be considered an industrial private landowner. The non-industrial would be folks like myself that might own a 40 of land, or an 80 or 120 acres up in the Great North Country, or anywhere really in the state. But let's just say it's heavily forested. What's their role in this? How, if they're looking at the forest industry, how do they fit into this?
Well, first of all, when you bring all those small private landowners together in the state of Michigan, the forest owners, they actually own the largest percentage of forest land in the state. So they're a very big player, even though it's made up of hundreds of thousands of small landowners. And it's a very important thing. Most of them own their land for a reason other than timber. But one of the key messages for them is if they can understand what they have out there and they can be incented to maintain it in timber, it can be a positive win-win for them, because they can produce timber, receive some revenue, which can help the industry, and at the same time they receive some revenue which can allow them to continue to own their land, pay their taxes, use it for wildlife benefits that they want to use it for, or recreation in whatever process. So it really can be a win-win situation. But one of the important things for them is knowing what they have and making sure that there's markets there that can take that wood that they'll produce.
John?
Charlie makes a good point. I mean, we are obviously very interested in timber supply, and that we need it to maintain our facilities, and the non-industrial private landowners are 46% of that land base. So Charlie hits it on the head. We need to make sure that they understand what they have, and those landowners have access to professional advice, so they can make the right decisions on their land. They have an interaction with a professional that can look at their concerns, what they want long-term out of that land, but also advise them on what the opportunities are for harvest, for revenue growth. Some of the things that the legislature can do. And Senator, you've been working on some bills relative to a second tier, I call it, the qualified forest plan, that allows some tax breaks with some requirements for forest management plans. But in our view, that's a good thing, and it allows landowners to maintain their ownership intact at the size it is. It doesn't get broken up because they can't afford to pay the taxes or whatever anymore. So it helps them keep a more viable sized ownership that that everybody can, to the point of recreationists can use it, the timber industry can benefit from the timber harvested off of it, as well as it creates a few less of those access problems for four-wheelers or whatever if you're dealing with 2 or 3 landowners to get access to go through a trail as opposed to 15 because it had to get broken up to make it affordable. So they're a huge part of the industry here in Michigan, and we need to embrace them as much as we can.
Maybe we could shift a little bit. Let's talk about the supply and the opportunities that come with having ample supply and maybe some of the challenges. And I know, John, back in the day when I was hauling wood, I understood the supply issue pretty well then, but I also, when I became a legislator, was very aware of the supply, and sometimes kind of in the negative by not having enough of it. But maybe you could share a little bit about the needs and the opportunities.
Sure. Well, there is a lot of opportunity. We talked a little bit about the numbers, and the numbers indicate that we're growing close to 2 times what we harvest, and mortality almost is the same volume as we harvest each year. So there's a lot of opportunity there. The second piece of that I would say from our viewpoint, an industrial viewpoint, is we compete within our own corporation for capital. So as our board of directors that has a responsibility to our stockholders looks at making investments, they look at where's the best return on investment, where's the best opportunity to return to our investors and keep them interested in our stock and keeping us viable. When that margin starts to disappear in our region and it's better in another region, we suffer the consequences, and it's harder to attract capital even within our own corporation, let alone a global economy. So it's very important. The timber supply is a little more stable in the south right now because of ownerships like Charlie's, Plum Creek, where they have bigger ownerships that are interested in managing those things. They have an advantage over us that way. We have a ton of resource here, a little more varied ownership. So there's a lot of opportunity here relative to what's growing and then what's available. And that's the big issue, is how can we make as much of that fiber available as possible within the context of what the individual owners want for that property.
If I could too, just so the viewers understand maybe a little bit of what you were talking about in real life, I recall a few years back when I served in the House dealing with Louisiana-Pacific, and I believe it was your CEO that came into Lansing at that time. The company was looking at an expansion, and the CEO shared with us they were considering Michigan. In fact, they were looking at the Sagola mill, where the mill that you've done a lot of your work. And the big issue at that time was supply and the availability to the supply. It's not that we don't have the timber supply in the Upper Peninsula or in northern Michigan. It's there. It's having available timber supply becomes the problem. And if I'm not mistaken, was there not a decision made back then? And we did not get the expansion at Sagola. Did they not build a mill down south? We did look hard at the whole Lake States area. But at the time, the decision was to build the new mill in Alabama. A lot of resource available, and it was the right decision for the corporation and our stockholders. So no doubt about it. We're still very high on the Lake States and Michigan as well. And again, it boils down to that timber supply is very important. So owners like Charlie, owners like you, family owners that have land that have goals and want to keep a healthy forest and harvest it are very important, because as that profitability opportunity for us or any other corporation for that matter becomes greater somewhere else, it's awful hard to stay competitive. Charlie, you come from a little bit different angle. You're the landowner, but you need the markets, you need the mills if you're going to actually produce the wood and then deliver. Maybe explain a little bit how that works when it comes to having a place to go with your product, the importance of it.
Yeah, that's very important. People often ask us, why would we be out there promoting more harvest on state land or federal land? And the answer gets back again to, if we have a vital and good working forest products business, that allows us to have a market for our products. And right now we can move the products that we cut today in Michigan without a problem. If you were to have a large mill, such as the Sagola mill, Louisiana-Pacific mill, or one of the other pulp mills go out of business, that would have a huge negative impact on us, because 70% of our wood in general goes to in what you refer to as those lower valued products. You can only generate so much high quality veneer and stuff, and so you need those markets, and if they go away, that would be the worst thing for the management of our land base.
You know, and just to add to that, Charlie, you really have put your money where your mouth is, in a sense, on that issue, and I've watched that through the years. Plum Creek, who you produce or harvest timber on your lands and sell it to make money, right. And you have always, the company has always been an advocate for more timber supply on all the above. You mentioned the federal forest, the state forest, the private lands. And if you really looked at it, I would have thought early on when I watched Plum Creek get into this thing that they would just be concerned about Plum Creek and that would be it. But you really have taken a bigger approach to this for all the right reasons, and that is to keep the industry alive. That's right. Ultimately. So your company has said all along, you cannot supply alone the mills, and,
nope,
and,
that's right.
and that's so true. And I don't know that people understand that. You know, this three-legged stool we're dealing with the state, the private land, the state land, and the federal land, and the importance of that balance. Would you agree with that?
Most definitely. You know, 2 points along those lines is that you know, it might, just like it may seem best for Charlie's personal interest, of Plum Creek's interest, to have less timber on the market from other facilities or for other landowners. We also, you would think that for us, if a mill would disappear, it'd be a good thing because there'd be less competition for wood. But in many cases, the system is very well balanced. So if you have a piece of land that you want to manage and you have some professional advice on it and you have a management plan to harvest it, if a new page disappears or a potlatch disappears that uses softwood, we don't use that species. Most 40s in the Upper Peninsula have a myriad of species on it, and you need to be able to market all those products. And the system has worked very well together in that there are mills that take species and quality that we don't, and vice versa. So there's a good market for a variety of quality and species from every 40 that makes management viable and makes all these mills viable as well. So hugely important, and it's a strong relationship, and it's been working real well over the years.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of what the forest really offers. If we could, real quickly, let's just touch one more time on the recreational side of it, because people always, I think a lot of people believe you can only have one or the other. And I think it's pretty clear, based on what I've been hearing here and in my experience, we really can do both well when it comes to access and different things. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's no question about that, Senator. That's really a big benefit. And I'll give you a good example. A lot of hunters come up from Lower Peninsula, like to come up hunting in the Upper Peninsula. A lot of them like to hunt on our land. And we also allow them to camp on it, by the way. It's not required, allow them to go and camp. But they love to hunt our clear cuts where we've cut popple over the years. And you have to clear cut that and get it to come back. And we do that pretty aggressively, as the state does. But people that don't do that, or you see in some cases on federal land when that's not happening, that will have a negative impact on certain species of wildlife, such as deer and ruffed grouse in the future. So we're trying to help promote that, help the recreation.
Sure. John, your experience in the woods?
Most definitely. I am a member of a camp, love to deer hunt, love to rabbit hunt, various things like that, and healthy forests and diverse age classes are all important, that all come through good management, and it's a lot more cost effective to do it when you have a market for that product than to try to do it artificially and actually pay somebody to do that as opposed to receive revenue. So we got a great story, a renewable resource, and a great place to live, and it's nice to work here and it's nice to recreate here.
I agree, guys. Great story. Thanks.
Thank you.